Marina Abramović is a conceptual and performance artist who was born in Belgrade, Yugoslavia in 1946. Her parents had different upbringings. Here's her mother and here's her father, the year before she was born. Her mother came from a wealthy family and was well educated, while her father was one of 17 children and extremely poor. Abramović was raised by her religious grandmother till she was returned to her parents at age 6. This is her grandmother and her aunt. And this is Marina with her father. Abramović had a very difficult childhood as her mother was controlling, enforcing a 10 p.m. curfew for Abramović until she was into her late 20s. Abramović was given no artistic training as a child, but showed an interest in painting, having her first art show at 12 years old. Her first paintings were of her dreams, which she would paint frequently. Abramović received her undergraduate degree for painting at the Academy of Fine Arts in Belgrade. Here she is in her studio in Belgrade. And she went on to get her graduate degree at the Academy of Fine Arts in Croatia. After university, she returned to Yugoslavia to work as a professor, initially creating sound installations and then transitioning to creating works that involved the body, or her body. At 25, Abramović married Nessa Parafović. Here the two are pictured, and he is pictured here. He was also a conceptual and performance artist. Their marriage would end when Abramović relocated to Amsterdam. In 1976, shortly after her move to Amsterdam, Abramović met Jule. Here's a picture of them, who was a fellow conceptual artist who would become a romantic partner and artistic partner. And this marked a transition in her career as she transitioned from a solo performing artist to an artist who primarily performed with Jule till their relationship ended in 1988 when they performed their final piece together called Lovers. Abramović continues to work as a performance and conceptual artist and work as a professor at universities around the world. Abramović was born a year after World War II ended. Her parents were heavily involved in the National Liberation Army, a communist group fighting Germany in occupied Yugoslavia. Here's a picture of her father on a horse in 1944 on Liberation Day. When Abramović was in her 20s, the women's rights movement was spreading across the United States and beyond. The movement sought to liberate women from the constricting roles as housewives and caretakers. Abramović has been labeled a feminist artist throughout her career, but she doesn't view herself as one, as she feels artists are genderless. Abramović was a pioneer in the performing arts movement and the conceptual arts movement, becoming one of the first artists to experiment in the field, using the body primarily as a medium, and constantly pushing the limits of her body. Between 1969 to 1976, Abramović used her own body as both the subject and the medium in performances which tested her physical and mental endurance, while also emphasizing audience interaction. Her desire to perform torturous acts against her own body went against the constricting rules and ideas that characterized performance art at the time. In Rhythm Zero, in this slide you can see a snapshot of the performance piece, Rhythm Zero. In Rhythm Zero, Abramović stood motionless in front of an audience, giving them full power to engage with her body Abramovich left her audience a slip of paper with simple directions and 72 objects on a white tablecloth table that could be, and all of these objects could be used in any way they saw fit, including a loaded gun, scalpel, and a whip. Here's another slide from the performance piece, Rhythm Zero. Another slide. And this slide is from one of her performance pieces called Lips of Thomas, where Abramovich stood naked, ate a kilo of honey, drank a liter of red wine, and then began to cut a 5-pointed star on her stomach with a razor blade, whipping herself and finally laying down on a cross made of ice. When asked about her inspiration for this piece, Abramovich stated that it was very autobiographical. You have communism and orthodoxy perfectly combined, but with a twist. You have the cross, the star, the whipping, especially the whipping. I whip myself to the point where I don't feel pain anymore. She went on to say, so you can take all of these elements and transcend them in your spirit. It's very much like, rituals in the Amazon. They're unbelievably painful. They cut their bodies, they do terrible things. And why do they do this? Because in this way, you can actually conquer the pain. You go through into another reality. And to conquer pain is to get free of pain. So, this whole piece is about getting free of pain. This is how I see it. Here's another snapshot. From 1976 to 1988, Abramovich primarily worked with her romantic partner Yule. The body was further explored as a central motif in Abramovich's and Yule's work. Here's a work where Abramovich and Yule stood naked in a constricting doorway, forcing the audience to pass between them. In relation in time, both artists sat back to back with their hair tied together for over 17 hours. After Abramovich's relationship with Yule ended, she worked primarily as a solo artist with works like The House with the Ocean View, a public living installation which consisted of Abramovich living in 3 specially constructed living units in an art gallery, with every aspect of her life on display to the public. Movement is a key element in Abramovich's work. Performance pieces like Breathing In and Out, pictured here, Freeing the Body, snapshots here, and Light and Dark use repetition and rhythm to hypnotize the audience and seem to be a continuous element and principle of her design as an artist. When asked about repetition in her work, Abramovich said that repetition is such an old structure. In different cultures around the world, all the ancient civilizations and ceremonies are based in some way on repetition. I asked my students to just open and close the door without entering and without exiting, just doing the action of opening and closing the door. When you do this for 3 hours, the door stops being a door. It becomes a universe. It becomes something else. The sense of transformation that takes place even in these simple rituals is incredible. If everyone stopped looking into their phones, they would be able to see this better. Inactivity or stillness is similarly used in Abramovich's work to hypnotize the audience, as in Rest Energy. This is a picture of the performance, Rest Energy, and Night Sea Crossing. Stillness becomes intense and forces the audience to think about the idea of time as an object or idea presented in art. Abramovich has many functions in her art. Initially, when I started researching the subject, I found that the artist as the art object is a central function in her work, as Abramovich views her body as an object, but also as a tool, as her body takes an active role in her performances. Abramovich credits the body for her decision to focus on performance pieces, as she remarks that the moment I stood in front of the public and expressed my ideas using my body as the object and subject of the work, immediately it was clear that this is my best medium. Nakedness is commonly used by Abramovich in her performances. Even though she describes herself as insecure, when working she is not self-conscious, viewing her naked body not as hers, as she states, "I don't present myself, I present purely the female body. Whatever it is, young, not young, I don't care." Many of Abramovich's performances take place over long periods of time, pushing Abramovich mentally and physically, which challenges the passivity of her audiences, as they are forced to see her suffer. Abramovich uses time as a way to merge art and reality, as she states that if you do something for an hour or 2 hours, yes, it's a performance. But create something that lasts 2 months, 3 months, then it becomes life. Abramovich does not place great meaning on her works, rather distancing herself from her work. Later in her career, Abramovich reflected on the role of immateriality in her work, stating, "One thing that fascinated me about performance at the time and still now is that immateriality is the immateriality. It's so immaterial, and in the beginning, when you're a young artist, you make so much material because you are scared. You are not enough. Constantly you have to make more and more through youthful insecurity. Once you really get to the stage of being comfortable, you start to understand that you can create your own field and create direct communication with the audience. Once you find that, you find the entrance point to another world." Further, she states that when it came to art, I only cared about content, what a work meant. I had to come to believe that art must be disturbing, art must ask questions, art must predict the future. If art is just political, it becomes like newspaper. It can be used once and the next day it's yesterday's news. Only layers of meaning can give long life to art. That way, society takes what it needs from the work over time. Abramovich does not have an artist studio. Rather, she describes how she exposes herself to life, and from that, ideas come as a surprise. She doesn't pursue ideas that are simple and easy, rather focusing on the ideas that disturb her. In recent work, Abramovich has been criticized for her fame and status as a public figure. Roberta Smith, a reporter at New York Times, called Abramovich's work, The Artist is Present, cheesy. Furthermore, a modern art website called Hyperallergic called her an aloof elitist. I don't agree with the critics, rather I feel The Artist Present played into Abramovich's status as a public figure and exposed her vulnerability and her ability to embrace her role as a celebrity. In the beginning of her career, Abramovich was criticized for her work, but in later years, her love life and her persona became something critics focused on instead of the validity of her work.